happy to see you here. Last week we were teaching about the negative energy zone, and somebody suggested that I talk about the subconscious mind before we move upwards to the positive energy zone, and I think that's a really, really good idea, because there's a transition in here where you go from pride to courage, when you go from fear to faith, that needs to be explained. How do we get from the operating out of fear to operating out of faith and inspiration? So for today's lesson, we have programming or reprogramming the subconscious mind. And this is such a big subject that I'm only going to scratch the surface. I'm going to explain to you what the subconscious mind is, how it works, and why it's important that we understand our subconscious mind. And I don't think you hear a lot of training on this one. Almost none, probably. So the subconscious mind is like a program running in the background. You don't even know necessarily, unless you're tuned into your subconscious mind, you don't know what a huge influencer it's having in finding success in our relationships, and our happiness, and our self-esteem. So a subconscious mind, let me, I don't know if I should say this verse now or later, but I have it on, let's just do it now. It's Psalms 19:12. Malimo, do you have the Bible? Somebody has the Bible? Okay, Steve.
Ni nani awezaye kuyatambua makosa yake? Unitakase na mambo ya siri.
What it's saying here is, how can I know all this sin? And really the right definition of sin is missing the mark. You know, sin has changed, and people shout, repent, and fire, and all this stuff. But sin is just missing the mark. And so, the Psalm David, he said, I don't even know where all I'm missing the mark. And that's what happens when we have trauma locked in our subconscious brain, our subconscious mind. Because the trauma causes us to not see things exactly as they really are. We see them through the lenses of that trauma. And I might just tell a small story here. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, a man and his wife, and she has done extensive study in this, therapy for herself, because she was abused as a child. And she didn't even know, she had no idea in the first half of her life or more how much this trauma was affecting her daily decisions. So she said the other evening they went to a school program, and all the school children were singing. And there was a little 4 or 5 year old girl, and she was just singing her heart out. But she wasn't real good. She wasn't so good on the notes. But she was happy, and she was singing loud. And so the director went over and whispered something to her. And nobody knows what she whispered. But she probably told this child to quiet down a little. And what the child heard is, you're not singing properly. And she began to cry. And she couldn't stop. And so, of course, this lady really sympathized with this child, because she knew what that felt like. And she said she would try to stop, but she couldn't. The tears kept rolling, and she couldn't sing. And then there was another teacher in the audience who came and got the child and took her on her lap and went cheek to cheek, and whispered in her ear. Pretty soon the child's happy again, and she goes back in, and by the next song she's singing. So she said that trauma didn't lock into her subconscious brain. She was helped for it to move out. But many of us didn't have that other teacher who came to help us when we were small and we received some trauma. And so it stays locked in your brain. And so it's a program running in the background that says, you don't know how to sing, you're not good enough, you can't do this, you're too slow, And it can be in any area of life. Now, when the U.S. went through the Great Depression in the 1930s, that created a tremendous amount of trauma. And, you know, those small children, they go to the table and there's not enough food. And so they're thinking, wow, I have to grab quickly. I have to grab quickly. And so that gets locked into their brain. So even when they're old and they have a lot of money, when they see food, the subconscious part of their brain is running and says, grab quickly. Eat as much as you can. You see. And so it has and save. Some of those people, when they passed away, their children were shocked at the junk they had saved, because they went through so many years of trauma without having anything. And so they said, if I get something, I have to save it, because maybe I'll use it later, maybe we'll have another Great Depression. And so they never were able to be released from that trauma of their childhood, what they went through. So what I want this verse to say is, we don't know where we're missing the mark when we have trauma locked into our brain. Yes.
You know, when you are feeling that testimony of that girl, I'm concerned about what happened this week with a school called Butere Girls. Those girls were just performing there before, but now comes a time when, you know, when they were going to play or to have their drama, you know, the police started, you know, throwing tear gas at them. And, you know, they didn't know that, you know, the drama had political intentions.
Right.
So I feel maybe that could happen and can affect their unconscious mind.
Subconscious, yeah.
Subconscious mind. Because if they are not helped, anything they do, they will fear.
They will fear,
they will
yeah.
think that maybe there could be some politics in it.
Right.
And they can easily receive another blow of tear gas.
But see, those things happen in life. I remember we were in church and the phone rang, and I didn't think anything of it until the usher dashed up and told me, your house is on fire. So then for a long time after that, when the phone rang when I was in church, I jumped. Before that, I never even listened to the phone ringing. I didn't hear the phone ringing. And so we get trauma in life, but what I want to teach you about is understanding how to unlock and reprogram that trauma, because trauma comes. So cleanse me from hidden faults or trauma, hidden trauma that I don't even know about, that I don't even know is working in my brain. Come on in up there, there's plenty of seats. Somebody can sit there. Okay, so number one, the mind is a combination of the subconscious and the conscious that should work together. So I have an illustration here, and there's a spot on number 4, if you have a pencil, where you can kind of draw, because we're going to talk about this quite a bit. This is the subconscious mind. It collects everything that happens to you. It's a recorder from little on up. It's recording. Now, it's working, it's where the conscious mind draws from. The conscious mind is where we speak from. So our conscious mind always draws from our memories, from how we think and how we feel. We have all those things, it's like a computer. And so I wrote in here, as a man thinks, but I'm going to add some other words. As a man believes, or a woman. That's how we live our life. So, let me explain this. When you have thoughts and feelings, it creates attitudes. Thoughts and feelings. So I get up in the morning, and thoughts and plus feelings gives me an attitude, creates an attitude. I get up in the morning and Eunice is very nice to me, and I think, wow, my wife really loves me, I feel so nice. I begin to have an attitude of, this is a good lady. She's adding value to me. Then I go on in life, and I'm on my motorbike, and somebody cuts me off, and yells at me, I have thoughts and feelings. I have a bad attitude. So our subconscious is full of all those things that have happened to us throughout our life. But some of them, we haven't accessed them for a long time. We haven't thought about them. We don't know why we're doing what we're doing. We say, well, I'm following my intuition, but my friend told me yesterday, your intuition comes from your subconscious mind. These fears of what's happened to you as a child, I have to avoid that. And so we were discussing, if you're experiencing trauma responses, flight, fight, freeze, fawn, or addiction, you're probably operating somewhat out of trauma that's locked in your subconscious brain. And so you're going to miss the mark. You're not going to get the relationships the way you want. You're not going to find the peace of your mind that you want. You're not going to have the success in business that you want. Because there's something running in the background that's telling you can't do this. You need to get away from this person. This person isn't safe. And you don't even really necessarily think it out loud. It's just running there in the background. So Proverbs 23:7, you want to read that one?
Mithali 23:7 inasema, maana anavyo nafsini mwake ndivyo alivyo. Akwambia haya, kula, kunywa, lakini moyo wake hawi pamoja nawe.
Okay, so that's why I chose this verse. It says, eat and drink, he said, but his heart is not with you. Because the words coming out are saying one thing, but the subconscious mind is telling us something else. And we don't know. We haven't been trained to understand that. So attitudes, thoughts and feelings equal attitude. Attitudes turn into beliefs. Now, can you imagine as a child, if you're subject to abuse, you have a lot of thoughts of fear, you have a lot of feelings of fear, and you begin to have an attitude of, I'm in an unsafe place. So, as a child, you're abused or mistreated or bullied, and see, that's the other thing we talked about. You have to learn to operate out of your truth, because supposing these two are brother and sister, this one's a very aggressive by nature. This is very, very timid by nature. The same parents raise these two people. This one is okay. What happens to him? The stimulus doesn't affect him. This one is devastated day after day after day. So then she can say later in life that I had such a terrible upbringing, and Silas says, no, we had a good upbringing. Everything was fine. You see, so that's his truth and that's her truth. And when I try to explain that to people, they say, no, there is no such thing as his truth and her truth. There is the truth. And they don't understand what I'm trying to explain. Yes, there is the truth. God is the truth. But you see what I'm saying. We all react differently to trauma. And so, for some, the trauma rolls off. Now, Silas might be traumatized by something else.
But if even the people are growing, the children are growing from the same parents.
Yes.
The parents, they don't have the same behavior to each
That's right.
child. So even kids.
Yeah. So that's another good point. The parents don't have the same behavior to each child. And so when we grow up in a setting that feels unsafe and we have feelings of fear, we begin to develop that attitude that I can't survive, I can't thrive, I can't thrive. And attitudes turn into beliefs. And we have these subconscious beliefs. They're called limiting beliefs. I've had a lot of limiting beliefs. that I've had to overcome, even to become a speaker, because where I came from, we had to have the approval of man to believe that we had the approval of God. And I didn't have the approval of man. And so now to let that, to reprogram that belief. And so it takes time. It's, you know, people want to, they preach that, well, when you get converted, everything changes. Well, the direction of your life changes, but there's still a lot of healing that has to take place.
Yeah, so,
I think that is the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's ignorance. I think sometimes it's con man, but sometimes it's ignorance. They don't know. It's what they've heard. They've never thought about it. It's just it's a phrase that sounds good, and so they say it. But then if you ask them a question, well, how does that work? Then they don't know for sure.
so I think we should talk more about it. It's clear enough, I think, for everyone that the subconscious mind is recording things subconsciously, not consciously.
Right.
But when we are in a certain age and we understand the difference between subconscious and conscious mind, so we should start consciously choose what to put in subconscious mind and become a believer.
Right.
How to do that?
Right.
This is this is my question.
Let's see. Okay, so Diana, you might be farther along than some because of your life experiences. I'm going to give you the name of someone where you can watch on YouTube.
No, I'm working on that in more than a decade.
Yeah. There's a person. A person by the name of Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, I know it.
You know him. You can write this name down and listen to his training on YouTube. But he's really good at training people how to reprogram the subconscious mind. And, okay, so let's keep on going here.
This is not the real name, dispenser. This because coming from dispensary means.
Okay. So I'm going to keep moving here. The conscious mind is where we normally speak from. Now I have this. You can hold this up, Alina, so everybody can see it. And Eunice, you can hold this one up. I just, Diana can. No, it's this way. Yeah. So we have, and you can, and I left a little space in number 4, so you can draw your own. So you have what's called the container of the unconscious. I'm just going to put unconscious. And from it, we have the conscious mind. All right, we speak out of our conscious mind. So, from the conscious mind, and the conscious mind draws from the unconscious mind. Because this is our life experiences. This is the operating system in the background. So what Diana's telling us here is we want to reprogram the unconscious mind. One of the ways that we reprogram that is by what we hear. Everything we hear, everything we feel goes into the subconscious mind. Our thoughts go into the subconscious mind. So, who do you hear speak the most? Yourself. So start speaking positive words to yourself. Start speaking words of life. You know, somebody told me the other day, I am forced. I said, don't say that. That means you're a victim. You have to start becoming self-aware. Listen to what you're saying. You can sit down. I think everybody's seen that, but you can draw your little illustration. Listen to what you're saying. Are you saying, I am forced? Or are you saying, I am blessed? I am capable. I am able. Because what you speak begins to feed back into the subconscious mind. Now, these are some simple things that we can all do.
Means that we have to exchange what is in the subconscious mind, just to if we would like to remove it, we have to put some new
Information.
thinking model.
We have to, actually, I think what we do, I don't know if we ever exchange it, because every experience we've ever had goes into the subconscious, but I think we have to bring it more in alignment with our alignment.
Yeah.
We have to, so alignment, these two need to be in alignment, which means you need to unlock the trauma, repressed trauma, unlock so that it's no longer working against you. So there are people who are in religious organizations that have been trained. A lot of fear has been put in here. Eunice was listening to a sermon today, and the man said there is no training in the New Testament about tithing. That's in the Old Testament. He said there's a lot of training in the New Testament about giving generously. But he said some pastors have put it into your brain every week, if you don't tithe, you won't be blessed. If you don't tithe. And so God becomes the merchant man. You can bribe God. You give him money, he gives you blessings.
Wow.
So that's poured into your subconscious mind. Now, that's never eliminated, but we go back in and check that belief, that programming, and say, now that was bad programming, that's not going to program me, that's not going to influence me anymore. I like to call these influencers because I don't know a lot about any subject when it comes to human behavior, but I know a lot of subjects. And when I talk to people, they might be very, very honed in on one part. Like they're honed in on, Joe Dispenza is honed in on how to reprogram that. So I'm going to give you his name. You can listen to him to help you reprogram if you suspect that you're having trauma responses. If you try to have a relationship and you find yourselves jumping up and running away, it's because there's something inside that doesn't feel safe. You should be able to negotiate this and say, okay, I don't think this is going to work for me at this time. Let's part as friends. But if you find yourself overworking, there's probably some hidden trauma that's still locked up. You think you have to, because maybe as a child, that's the only time you ever got praised, is when you were working. And so it went in there and programmed your mind and say, working brings praise, working brings praise, working brings praise, so many times as a small child. And I think most of our programming for life, how many can guess what age that is? By what age do you think you're programmed?
1 to 7.
Yeah.
0 to 7.
0 to 7, but mostly by age 3.
Yeah, 3. Yeah.
If you're going to adopt a child and they're older than 3, a lot of their life is already programmed.
Yeah.
You're going to have to reprogram out the bad behaviors. Yes?
Just learning that anything that is in subconscious mind, to delete it, it's just to surround yourself with the right people, to learn and also observe some things.
Yeah, self-aware.
Yes.
But you can't delete it.
No, you can't delete it.
If you remove it, there's in this world there is no empty space. You should.
In this world, there's no empty space.
Exactly.
I love that.
Remove it with something right.
So we can't remove.
They say nature
Like affirmation, another one. You believe for yourself. Of course I can. And then there are different techniques how you can increase your autoesteem. But there is
Now I'm going
experts.
I'm going to give you a word here that my consulting coach gave me. Because there's two schools of thought. There's the school of thought, and I think I've said it here before, and that's why I want to say it again, because I want to modify this. I have said that some people say 50 to 75% of your memories aren't exactly like what happened, because it gives you a feeling. And what happens then is, if I'm operating out of the positive energy zone and I tell Kipchumba something, or if I'm operating out of the negative energy zone and I tell him something, he feels the energy. Okay, I can give him the same words, but the energy's different. So then, as he reconstructs this memory in the future, he will alter it, what I've said, to fit the feeling that he got. Does that make sense? But I was talking to this lady the other day, and she said, don't discount what you're feeling. She said, because I've been discounted all my life. I would say, this is what I felt, and they said, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Everything is okay. You're just delusional, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's that side of it. I was very, very happy that she gave me that feedback, because if you're feeling threatened by something, someone or some organization, that's your subconscious mind speaking to you. Ask God to help you, reveal to me what happened, and help me to find healing for that, so that I can move forward, so that even though it's still in my subconscious mind, it's not influencing me like it used to influence me, so that I can be calm and I'm not emotionally hijacked. And that's the other thing I wanted to write on here. When you are emotionally hijacked, you know, I've told the illustration, emotionally. The airplane is flying to Paris. The hijacker is on board, and he comes up to the captain with a pistol, and he said, now you're flying to Germany. All right, so as humans, sometimes we have a plan of action, but then something happens and triggers us, and we become emotionally hijacked. And you don't end up going where you were hoping to go. You don't find the success that you wanted to find. So when you are emotionally hijacked, the river of emotions comes up, and that can last for 3 to 4 days. If it's a bad hijacking, if it's a bad emotional hijacking. Now, if Eunice gets emotionally hijacked, I can tell that she's emotionally hijacked. She doesn't need me to give her answers. She needs to have her river of emotion come down. She needs time plus space. She doesn't need me to be in her face. Okay? So if your partner or your employee or your boss becomes emotionally hijacked, give them time and space, 3 to 4 days. Now, it may be less than that, but it could last this long. Then when the river of emotions comes down, maybe we can have a conversation. Maybe we can say, what was there that hijacked you the other day?
Mommy, calm the baby outside, please.
What was there that hijacked you the other day? And then the challenging part of the subconscious mind is there are memories that are so painful that we don't want to go back there and think about it. And so it stays locked in that trauma. And so you have to find someone who you feel safe with. And if you don't find someone who you're safe with, you'll have to find God. And enough to the point where you can go and talk to God about this. Because you're not going to open up a wound to somebody who might pour salt in. The Bible said...
Subconsciously, even not on purpose.
Yeah, subconsciously.
Yeah.
It's not on purpose, because a lot of times perpetrators and people who have personality disorders, sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths, or even borderline personality disorders are created. They were abused or they were in an unsafe place when they were a child. And so they're acting and reacting, and some of them become terrible people. And they're just trying to survive. They're in survival mode. Okay, so...
Just to prove that it's not my fault,
Yeah.
it's the people's fault.
So,
Yeah.
I think I've given this illustration before, but suppose that a soldier comes home from the war, he's been traumatized, he's got PTSD, and he feels like he wasn't tough enough. He wasn't brave enough. Now he's got this small boy, and the boy's running around with no shirt on. Dad takes a cigarette out of his mouth and puts it out on his bare skin. And he flinches, and he says, no, you got to get tough. You got to get tough. This world is cruel. You got to get tough. Okay, so finally the boy learns, I don't flinch, because every time I flinch, Dad's going to do it again. But he becomes hypersensitive. And sometimes we're hypersensitive to certain things. And when we see it coming, or we think we see it coming, our intuition says, this guy's not safe. So I either fight him, or I run away from him, or I freeze up, or I fawn, which means I agree with him on the surface, but I don't do anything. I don't do what he says. And so, because our intuition comes out of our subconscious minds, it might be that this guy's completely safe, but it just reminded me of a trauma that's never been healed. And so, I can't change all of you, but I can change me. And so, what I do personally, and I think we can all do, is create moments where people have happy thoughts and feelings. Give people words of life. Bring positive into their life. Then, it's the law of sowing and reaping. Pretty soon, they recognize every time I come around, I'm adding value. They begin to have an attitude about me that's good. Mzungu is good. We enjoy having Mzungu here. We're sorry when Mzungu is gone, because Mzungu adds value. They don't think all those things consciously. It's running in the subconscious. Okay? Then, that comes back to me. Oh, happy to see you. So glad you've come today. Wow. You see? And you begin to build relationships. And you begin to recognize that other people have trauma. And that's why they're doing what they're doing sometimes. They're acting out of their trauma. They're not acting out of where they wish they were yet. So the thing that separates the subconscious mind, this is where we're getting into the nuts and bolts of this whole thing. The thing that separates the subconscious mind and the conscious mind is called the analytical mind. I'm thinking about, why did I say what I said? Why did I react the way I reacted? And you start to mature. This couple that I was talking to, he used to be a preacher in that religious organization that I grew up in. And his wife was abused. So they have a lot of trauma on different levels. But even before they left that religious organization, when they were counseling people, they would say, what was your childhood like? And they said it was amazing. People began to share their childhood. They said we would get an insight into what's motivating them. Because maybe they would say, my mother was very exacting. I went to sew because they sew all their own clothes, you know, and I've known of ladies who were professionals. And then the 12-year-old daughter tries to start sewing her own clothes, and, well, that's not good enough. There's threads hanging out, and the seam is crooked. And so finally, some of these children, they just don't sew at all. They just give up on it. I can't sew good enough. I can't be like my mom. And so it's not a safe place. They just hire somebody else. and they hope their husband makes enough money to pay the seamstress. And so the analytical mind, and Viktor Frankl has a quote on that. Viktor Frankl has a quote. He said, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. So when you receive a stimulus, before you respond, there's a space. And so maybe last time I received this stimulus and I didn't respond well. So then I have to ask myself, why did I respond? Become self-aware. Why did I respond the way I responded? Is there a way, or really it's a reaction. Why did I react the way I reacted? Is there a way that I could have responded that would have been better? And so the space between the stimulus and the reaction is where we can engage our analytical mind. Now, if you've never been trained, what do you engage? There's nothing to engage. Diana.
My granny used to say, count to 10 before you answer.
Yeah, count to 10. Some people have to count to 100. So in that space is the power to choose our response. Now, Viktor Frankl went through some tremendously terrible difficulties. He was in a concentration camp. They took away his clothes, which took away his dignity. They took away his food. They made him work. He lost his health, so he lost everything. And he said, what can I do? So he was feeling like a victim. What can I do? They've taken away everything. And then he realized there's one thing they can't take away. They cannot take away my response. I am no longer a victim. I can respond in a positive manner. After that, it didn't matter what they did to him, he was happy. Because he learned the lesson of contributing factors and determining factors. And he said, this is a contributing factor, but it will not I will not internalize it. It will not determine whether I have a good day or not. So his thoughts and feelings, he learned to control them. He connected with God. And that's where I can always point everybody to that. Connect with God. On the level of your understanding, on the level of your language, on the level of your experience, you can connect with God. And when you have that moment between the stimulus and the response, we can count to 10, but we can also say, God help me. And you know, there's times when I have even in the middle of a difficult conversation, I've been looking at this person as they're yelling at me and praying, God help me to respond in a proper manner. Help me to live out of love instead of out of my trauma. Help me that the other day, it's been a few weeks ago now, I was emotionally hijacked. I think it lasted 4 days, and Eunice didn't know it. She said, how could you be emotionally hijacked? And I said, I've had years of experience. I've learned to hide it. Nobody knows where I'm emotionally hijacked. Matter of fact, I might tell more jokes then than I do on a normal day, because it's a way of hiding my emotional hijacking, because in that organization you couldn't be real. You couldn't be who you are. You couldn't be authentic, because if you were, and you explained that you had a problem, you were going to be disciplined. And so you learn to lie, live a lie, didn't even know it. I remember several years ago, a man said, in that organization, the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is you pick up your cloak of fear, and you put your cloak of fear on, and you don't even know it. Because you put that fear on since you're little. And everything operates out of, will I please man or not? Your whole vision goes down here instead of up here. And I think it happens in all cultures. We go into churches and and we say, can I please the pastor? If I can please the pastor, everything's good. If I can't please the pastor, I'm not right with God. I think I see some heads nodding. I think that might be a problem. Okay, so take an honest assessment of your life is a must for growth.
Please.
We must become self-aware. We must not be a victim. For growth, we get to that point where we learn how to respond, and we spend more time with God, quiet time with God, however it works for you. Because like I say, everybody has a different connection. The Father doesn't treat every son and every daughter exactly the same. Matter of fact, Jesus didn't even. He had a favorite disciple. It's okay. The other disciples had to accept that. This is his favorite, but we're also disciples. It doesn't matter. That is a contributing factor, but it's not going to determine the fact that I can't be a good disciple. Take an honest assessment of your life. Are you operating out of trauma? I remember when I was traumatized, I think flight, I used to think I went into fight mode, but I really think it was flight mode because flight mode has overworking, and I overworked. That was my drug of choice. And I know a lot of people that becomes their drug of choice because you can accomplish something and you get praises for it. And so that makes you feel good and it gives you good thoughts. And so you see something tangible. But the problem is if you overwork, you neglect something else. So, become aware. How many of you have ever know what I'm talking about when I say, have you been emotionally triggered? Do you know what emotionally triggered when you're hijacked? So everybody knows what that's like. Okay, after the emotion has come down, take a little time and say, what triggered me? Go into your subconscious mind and ask God, is there a trauma back there that's locked? Can it be healed? How can it be healed? So that next time I'm not triggered by this incident. Or, at least, if you can't get to that point, ask God to help you. And when we have thoughts and feelings that go into our subconscious mind, you can actually program your mind to have the feeling of what will it feel like when that happens again and I respond in a better way. And allow yourself to feel that. Does that make sense? So Silas and I have had a disagreement. I've yelled at him. I come back home and I say, why did I respond towards Silas that way? He said something I didn't like. I yelled at him. So next time if he says that, I'm going to say something kind. And then imagine the feeling that you will have from being kind. That's powerful. Imagining the feeling. And there's something called theta. I hope this isn't... I don't want to get too far out left field. But the theta is the time of your brain when it's resting. So just before you go to sleep, imagine the feeling that you will have when you succeed at this goal. Allow your brain to rest with that nice feeling. When you first wake up in the morning, and this is where it works for me.
Yeah, I know.
The gears aren't turning so quick. It's the theta moment. You feel relaxed. You feel loved. You feel like God's grace is sufficient. I can do this. I can have a good day. And so, hang on to that feeling. Now, the other thing I think is kind of important is come up and take a picture of this trauma responses and then ask yourself, which one do I have? Because we all have trauma responses.
Can you have more than one?
Yeah, we can have more than one. Matter of fact, we have a cyber guy. Cyber guy, come up here. So everybody, we've got another business started now. Yeah, it's People Restoring Our Own Future. If you need any of this material, give it as it. It's right here in the impasser room. So you can go in there, you can tell him what you want, he can print it out for you, and we have our own cyber now. We want to add more businesses as God gives us grace, because we have to restore our own future. See, this is the problem. I was talking to some Mzungus yesterday. One was from Switzerland, one was from Norway, and one was from California. And they were NGOs, and they'd been in Turkana. And I said, the challenging thing about Turkana, or Gulu, Uganda, is that, yes, war devastated them. So what happens then is the NGOs come in and give them food and clothing, which they need to survive, help them build them schools, and then they become dependent. They become dependent. That's why U.S. aid, Trump discontinued it, because this doesn't stand for aid.
It doesn't, and they don't teach them how to maintain that.
Right.
So
This stands for the U.S. Agency of International Development. And what they're doing is keeping you dependent. So people were upset that Trump eliminated U.S. aid. It's not aid. It's keeping you dependent. If you want to be a baby the rest of your life, find somebody who will feed you. But if you want to grow up and become mature, take responsibility for your life. So he said, we're going to eliminate this. It's going to cause some short-term problems. But in the long run, it'll be better for you. I don't want people here in Kipsongo to be dependent. I want them to be independent. I want them to be not victims.
Give me money. Stop talking. Give me money.
Be quiet. So allow yourself. Allow yourself as much time and space. Don't feel guilty that you got hijacked. You can't. You're not responsible for every negative thing that happened to you in your life. This little 4-year-old girl, 5-year-old girl, it wasn't her fault that the teacher came and made her feel bad, but she has to take responsibility for it. So give yourself time and space and say, it's okay that I got hijacked. Now, I don't want that to happen all my life, so how can I find healing? Connect with God. Pray. Ask God. Inspire me. Give me wisdom. And then James says, if you ask, he will give to you. And he won't yell at you for asking. Okay. What?
When your emotions are high, I don't think someone can pray sometimes.
Sometimes when your emotions are high, you can't pray. Somebody else has to pray for you.
Negatively high.
Yeah. Negatively high. Yeah. Right. Start praying for healing. Number 9. Start praying for healing and inspiration to know how to respond instead of react, and know how to imagine a healthier future. Number 10, outside feedback can provide us with different viewpoint and an alternative way of thinking and making better decisions and creating new habits. Somebody said once you create a better habit, your life automatically becomes better. And that's the challenge of believing that following God is like a light switch. It's not like a light switch. Your whole life doesn't just change like a light switch. Because you say, okay, now I want to follow Jesus, but then when the negative stimuli comes, we have a habit. We develop a habit about how we treat each other.
But habit is in the subconscious mind.
Yes, and so we have to stop and analyze that. And what most people tend to do is saying, if she wouldn't act like that, I wouldn't treat her that way.
Yeah.
No. You can treat her properly even if she doesn't act correct. Even if your wife is having a bad day, you can still treat her in a way that makes her feel good and have good thoughts toward you. That's emotional maturity.
Thank you, Professor. That one actually, I can take for my example. You can create a good habit. You know, it was 2002.
2002.
Yeah. I get to square with one of our pastors, and he thrown a lot of work to me until I feel like to quit in that work.
Yeah.
So when I sat alone down, I decide if I persist going like this, this one will be going worse later on. So I decided to say, let me give to God. And
Give it to
forgive.
God.
Yeah, let me forgive him.
Wow.
Despite what he did.
That's
You know,
powerful.
from there, I become very healthy and I sleep sound. And I become very good after now. So forgiveness is actually very important.
Letting go.
Yeah. Second to that, for the conscious mind.
Yeah.
To us, especially I can talk about the experience of South Sudan. You know, and to get a good habit to the child is from 3 years.
Yeah.
Now we have widows, we have widowers, we have children, orphan, and so on. Those people, they have nobody who teaching them.
Right.
So now they are growing up in a different habit, which is a chaotic habit. So such person, when you come to
They're growing up in a survival paradigm.
yeah,
They're just trying to survive.
exactly. So when you come to that person, as he grow up, become hard to tell him, you just live yours, because it became a habit to him or to her, and she's become bitter.
Yes, yes,
So
they can
such
become very
person-
bitter.
Such person actually, how are we going to solve that issue to them? Because he's a grown-up man, you tell him, live yours, just leave it, and then start a new thing. Yeah, like the one Trump did actually, I'm a friend to Trump. It
Yeah.
is not because Trump is, but I'm friends. What he did to Africa, very good. We become reliable to aid, and we are leaving our things to do it. So,
And we have resources.
we have resources.
We have Africa has so many resources.
Yeah, we need to start with our.
Kenya, it's so resourceful country.
But see what happens is that everything rises and falls with leadership.
Yeah.
And so we need to train a new generation that doesn't have their hand out. Because our leadership our leadership in almost all segments somehow has their hand out.
I think we needed, how is he going to work on that? Some cases needs mediator. And you need a mediator to resolve. Whereby you cannot go yourself. Somebody is still bitter, or maybe you can wait for emotions to go down. You can use anyway. Or psychologist.
You can use Pastor James.
Yeah.
You know, I feel it is important for everyone of us to embrace debriefing. Debriefing is where you can look for a confidant, somebody you can pour your trauma, your bitterness to. You know, because once you keep your bitterness in your unconscious state of mind, you have a lot of problems. There's this psychologist called Dr. Sigmund Freud, a psychologist. When he was talking about the state of mind, he said we have 3 sets of mind. We have the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. So if you allow things to go to your unconscious state of mind, your bitternesses, then you have a lot of problem, because once they sink back, they sink into unconscious, then you have a lot of problem because you start having funny characters. As the professor is talking about self-awareness, you start behaving in a funny way, and you start asking, why am I behaving the way I am behaving? So it is important to have that debriefing. Debriefing is to expressing your bitterness to somebody, because once you talk, once your mouth expresses those bitterness, and you are helped by somebody who is concerned, of course, the bitterness and the trauma will come out of you, and will come out of your subconscious state of mind.
So just like drugs and alcohol can influence how people do things and say things, maybe they say things today under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and tomorrow you bring it back and no, I never said that. I didn't do that. That's not me. It can also happen when we're influenced by a spirit, like say a spirit of fear. A spirit of fear comes over you and you react in a way, and later somebody says, why did you do that? I didn't do that. A spirit of anger influences you. It doesn't mean that you're possessed. It means you're being influenced. And so then we have to become self-aware and say, wow, I was influenced there and I didn't even know it. And so help me, God, to strengthen in this area to where I'm more influenced by the Spirit of God than I am by the approval of man or fear or anger or depression or whatever it is that was influencing me. And so the pastor from Sudan, he brought up my last point. Number 12 is, or number 11, let go. Let go of the ideas that aren't moving you into great growth and peace. Let go. And that's really, really hard, because if it's programmed into your mind that this is something you have to do, then to just say it's not what I want. I have to let it go. Right? But when you let it go, it creates a space. Then you have to develop a new habit, a new belief. If I let go of this one, but sometimes that moves us into the next level, because we let go before we know what the next step is. God says, let go of your anger, let go of your bitterness, let go of this thing that somebody did to you that wasn't right. Let it go. And you say, I won't have any energy to motivate me. What can I do? But when you, that's another subject. That's another step. And you won't be able to receive the next step until you let go. And so that's the step of faith. I've really spent hours thinking about this. How do I move somebody from pride to courage?
You can.
Well, but how can you explain it? Because that's what I try to do is explain the nuts and bolts so that you can understand, so that you can make even an honest assessment of where I'm at. You might be clear up now into anger or pride. And you say, hey, that's where I'm at. It's okay. I'm moving up. I came from apathy. I have a lot more energy now than I used to have. My life is better, but it's still not where I want to be. Okay, now maybe you're strong enough that you can go back into that subconscious mind and revisit something that happened. You can bear the pain, because it's going to bring some pain. And then you can let go. You can say, my mother beat me, and my brother was the one who did the wrong. She beat me wrong. And he was tricky. He did it again and again and again. Mama would beat me because my brother did the wrong thing, and then he made it look like I did it. You know what? I'm going to let that go.
So, Professor, once you let it go, once you let the bitterness go, then I think we should now embrace love, so that it may occupy that vacuum.
Right. Yeah. But first we have to feel loved.
Yeah.
We have to believe that God loves us, because maybe we've been in a difficult situation and we haven't really felt the love of a Father. Yeah. Okay, so let's do our exercise. And then I'll have you bring the prayer. I choose to let go of past disappointments. I choose to let go of pain. I choose to let God control my life. I choose
I choose
to live in forgiveness.
to live in forgiveness.
I choose
I choose
to live in love.
to live in love.
I'm going to add one more.
Yeah.
I choose
I choose
to be self-sustaining.
to be self-sustained.